So for a bit of a background and those that don't know, this is the third in a series of the webinars that we've been hosting for BITAx. BITAx is a chapter of BITA, which is a non-profit sort of organization that encourages its members to build relationship and sort of generate business and networking, all these great things that's happening. And BITAx specifically is dedicated to providing development and support and education for young professionals. And we started at the beginning of the year with a series of face-to-face events where many people could hear about, sort of good, hot sort of topics in that forum. And we've adapted and we've been holding these webinars, very much with a common theme. We've been lucky enough to speak to some great founders of businesses, and hear their story. And hopefully give education and support for the community that is BITAx. So this week, I'm very excited to be speaking to Lee Reynolds, the Managing Director of Kingsley Consulting. We've been speaking ahead of this, Lee. Welcome.
Hi, Pete.
Thanks for being on. And I think it's, I think there's some real sort of great bits of information we discussed about sort of covering today. Whether that's sort of, your journey as a founder and I suppose, really sort of how you got, where you were and the sort of the decisions you took to get there. So, I'm really looking forward to getting involved.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a great opportunity to be asked to do this. So I didn't obviously think 10 years or so ago I'd be sitting here kind of hosting this webinar with you and kind of offering my expertise on business, shall we say. But look, if anything, what I've been through and the kind of journey, the Kingsley journey, my own personal journey, that can help anyone. That's logged on to this today, then that's just amazing. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Great, fantastic. So I mean, it would seem to start from the beginning. When we were talking before, I think probably one of the most relevant deliberations and bit of sort of help and value we could touch on is a little bit about that early stage deliberation when maybe people that we have at the moment are trying to make similar decisions, about, getting set up in business, and it'd be good to probably get an understanding of, I suppose, your background and how you got to that.
Yeah, of course. So I've been in recruitment now for about 13 years. Before then I worked in sales in the telecom sector, and for me, recruitment was something that everyone back then, when I was kind of 24, 25, was saying that I should be in. I always just had an affinity to probably get on with people, understand people, whatever that might be, but just a kind of way that has allowed me to do well in sales, but also kind of away from business, kind of sport and other things that I've been interested in. So I wouldn't say I fell into recruitment. I was certainly, I wanted to get into recruitment. So I think back then, 2007, there was a number of recruitment companies that I interviewed for and ended up choosing what I would class as being a startup business ahead of some of the more very established names that everyone would have heard of that I got offered a job at. But I kind of wanted to be part of something which I could see had the potential to go forward very quickly, and therefore kind of is probably given me a real good backdrop to helping me shape the business that I'm now owning and kind of everything along the way. So I started from the bottom up. Started on the kind of lowest salary. I was 27, so you look at the average age of people that get into recruitment, I was well above that. It's generally kind of 18, 19. People coming either kind of out of college or out of university. So 27, I was feeling like I was already kind of the old kid on the block and had something to prove. But I absolutely loved it. And it wasn't purely motivational. I wasn't driven purely by money. That was a factor, because everyone, I guess, kind of has an understanding of recruitment that if you do well and you work for a good company, then you get paid well for it. And fundamentally, it isn't rocket science. We're not inventing a kind of product which we're hoping to sell to NASA. We're dealing with people. So, and I found that I just had an affinity for that. I could maybe understand why people were perhaps searching for a different way forward with their career. And so I was able to match them very closely with clients that we were working with. And so I guess at the start, it was very much proving that I had what it took. And then over the next few years, kind of making sure that I kind of honed my skills and was the best at what I did. And I did that.
Well, sorry to interrupt, Lee, but you probably didn't have too much. I mean, 2007's quite a time to try and start a new career in a new industry. Probably not too much margin for error, but considering what happened in 2008.
Exactly that. And I think I remember looking back now, like just kind of taking myself backwards when I was putting this together in terms of my journey, and thinking, actually, in recession, and this isn't me blowing my own trumpet here, because I've made plenty of mistakes and I'll go on to share a few, but kind of through the recession period, what got me through that was just having a diverse client base, where some clients really struggled during the recession of 2008, 2009. But we kind of tapped in as a business to make sure that, okay, it was engineering recruitment that was in, but we kind of worked in multiple sectors. So when one dipped, another one was still performing. So I managed to gain 2 promotions during that period, which was just unreal looking back on it now. So that was my kind of early career, and then I was fortunate enough to kind of the business that I was working in just exploded. We went from kind of a 8-person team when I joined, very close relationship with the directors. I was able to see how business was key decisions were being made, that kind of thing. To then, over the next kind of 4 or 5 years, we had offices in America, Australia, Kuwait, and it went from really a small turnover recruitment business to a multinational kind of 50 million turnover recruitment company very, very quickly. So the journey for me was unbelievable, and kind of given me a real good grounding for thinking, actually taking that experience and applying that in a way which perhaps some of the flaws that the directors had was when it grew too quickly, that transition from being a small family feel, doors always open policy to almost a corporate, now multinational recruitment business. Some of the fundamentals got lost along the way. And that kind of stuck with me a lot, and still does now. So.
Yeah. Okay. So as the company got bigger, you lost some of the, some of that contact with management, and it became more of a corporate. I mean, is that really when it started to come into your mind about, it's obviously great to be part of that phenomenal success, but it wasn't yours. Is that when you started to sort of think about, could you replicate this? Could you be? How long was that in your mind for?
I think it was kind of unique. I knew personally that the business wasn't giving me the ability to grow in the way that I could see I wanted to grow. So we went from being a really small company to a very big company in a short space of time. But fundamentally, the principles that I believed in terms of looking after people, support, giving people opportunity and empowering those people to make key decisions, be part of that decision-making process, it got lost. And so it was just timing. I was approached by a company in Derby who were a kind of projects management business. They wanted to set up a recruitment arm to support what they were doing in the railway sector, where I had a lot of traction, excuse the pun, and kind of client base there. And that for me was kind of in part why I left, but they also, there's a lot of colleagues that I was close to that I kind of wanted them still to be in the business. So it was the right time for me to leave. But in the background, I was having conversations with people then at that stage about, well, okay, can we do this ourselves? Like, can we set up our own thing? I think back then for me, timing probably wasn't right. The investment angles that we were looking at the time took a long time to kind of bear any fruition. And so I just kind of threw myself into this other opportunity with this other business. And in a way, I had the opportunity to build a recruitment company. Although I didn't have any ownership in it, it was just me. I kind of then grew it over the next couple of years to a multi-site operation, took it through a whole kind of rebranding process, and built a team within that 2-year period.
So looking back at that, having made that decision to, I mean, you've got, it sounds like you picked up the experience of running a business, but you also had that, security and maybe not some of the risk as well. Do you think you would have done things differently, or that was the right move to get the experience you needed?
I think looking back, that was the right opportunity that was presented to me at that time. And I think if other things in the background would have worked a bit quicker, then I would have probably gone down that route a lot earlier. So if we'd have had the investment come through, if we'd have been able to get that off the ground at that point, I think I would have committed to that. But as that dragged on and I became a father and you kind of put things into a priority place, the individuals in the background, by the way, at that point, I've since gone on and we have, like, they've either been a part of Kingsley or they're still currently a part of Kingsley. So we never lost that vision. We always had that vision that somewhere this will happen. Circumstances dictate it just can't be right now. And that was fine. Frustrating at the time, but you kind of think, well, actually, okay, looking at what I've learned through the process that I've been through over the last kind of 4 years with Kingsley and 2 years prior to that, that experience was just invaluable for me being able to get Kingsley off the ground. So no regrets. It was just a case of how all the kind of eggs got lined up in a row and it just didn't quite materialize at that time.
So fast forward a couple of years. So when you've been running the business now for a couple of years, I probably say that's a fair sort of function that you've described it as. But yeah. Then there's this second wave, the decision to. I mean, how did that come about? Was it an opportunity that presented to yourself, or did you go out looking for it?
It was kind of. It was an evolving conversation from conversations that I'd had a few years ago. So what kind of happened when I went to this company in Derby is that I grew a recruitment business, they had a bit of a kind of labour supply arm to it, but they weren't a recruitment company. So I kind of embedded that into the model. But the business was still operating under kind of one P&L structure. And so my remit was, upon joining, was that I would grow it to a certain point and then that would be broken away and would kind of stand on its own with come that some equity and some ownership and then the ability to really have a core part in a business which you've got some true ownership in. And such as life, things change. The projects business it fluctuated. So there was a lot of overhead cost in that business. And a lot of the recruitment margin we were making went into propping that business up. So the kind of investor. He was a kind of hedge fund investor. Very much didn't have any day-to-day operational involvement in the business. Just put the money in. So I was never really close to that person in order to influence the decision. So I kind of thought to myself, well, we've built a 3.5 million turnover business in the space of a few years here. Can we find a way to do this ourselves? And at that point, there was kind of 8 of us in the business. I still was having conversations in the background with a lot of contacts that I've got. And there was an opportunity to meet with a certain investor who was looking to perhaps grow their portfolio of companies, etc. And it took a long time. It took a lot of planning. There was a lot of obviously business forecasting that went into it. I was still kind of teetering on the fence really of whether to take that big plunge into the unknown, but actually I had a great job. I was earning really well, but I was 90% fulfilled, and I needed that other 10%. Not that I needed kind of full ownership in a business, but I needed to feel like I could make decisions, and those decisions we could implement through. And so that was the key driver. And so I gave everyone, we kind of, for months it went on, talks. We finally got it to a point of, well, actually this is going to happen here. Like what an amazing dream is about to become reality. But there was a lot of question marks over, well, do I just go? Do I kind of take everyone with me? So I gave everybody the option to say, look, this is the way I feel. We can really go and create something astounding over here, or you guys, you can kind of stay, and I'm sure you'll go on and do great things where you are. But so we fundamentally made the decision. Well, everyone made that decision because they all said, yes, please, we want to come. Like we want this journey with you. To really start Kingsley from day one, and it was a big risk. It was a very big risk to start from day one with kind of 8. I think there was 8. Yeah, there's 8 of us in a big office with lots of contractual covenant agreement there, which meant that we couldn't kind of go after our old client base. And that period was certainly an eye-opening experience to kind of jump from something that you already had established into something very brand new and raw, which hadn't proved itself. So I had the trust in the people that I'd seen grow, that they were the absolute right people to start this with. And so we did. We kind of made that decision, and we started in 2016.
Just to talk about that investment, obviously, going through the process of getting that, I can imagine, not being in that situation myself, as that was drawing to an end, as that was getting to a close, it probably would have come, maybe all consuming, like there were, 2 different steps forward, one with investment, and everything's going to change. I mean, how much time were you spending on that? Were there inquiries, you were going through that didn't work out? It sounds like, that was obviously a key driver in this process.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways that you can kind of tap into that world and seek investment, whether you've got a product or service. Apologies, I just thought I turned all of our phones off, but it's probably just hung up on a candidate there. That's not great, is it? So we kind of looked at a few different avenues. The bank way to go was a very committal way. So there was a lot of kind of loopholes that we had had to jump through. There was a lot of personal liabilities that you put on the line. So for some people, and that was probably myself included at that point, there was too much in terms of what I had at stake with a new family to really commit to that wholeheartedly. And that's me being truthful. So we went to kind of seek private investment from perhaps individuals that own businesses, and that potentially saw us as an added value to what they're already doing. And so that was a way that we could maybe go in with a smaller stake in terms of liability, but still have the ability longer term to have a majority share in a business. So we chose that way, and it was, as I said, kind of from start to finish, Pete. When we first started talking about it, it's kind of a 4-year, 5-year process really, until that really came to fruition, and we walked through the doors in our own business in 2016.
Yeah. It's clearly obviously sounds like that. So, when it changed and when you were wearing your MD's hat, but it was your own business. I mean, what was the difference between 3 months before you're an MD for another business? The contrast and how you went about things and how you're running the business. Was there an immediate change?
I would say no, in all honesty, that there wasn't. I think we were already running a company, albeit we just didn't have any equity in that business. So I was already kind of mindful in terms of cash flow. I had that exposure to board, so I'd already been operating at board level. And so within Kingsley, how we set it up was I had one director, but one kind of senior manager who I'd worked with for a very, very long time. And they were kind of trusted individuals, both from a personal level, but also I knew what they were kind of capable in doing business. So I think the kind of triangle that we created in terms of a senior management team, that enabled us to really bounce off each other in terms of ideas, share ways that we thought we could take it, what was working, what we needed to challenge. So I wouldn't necessarily say that decision fundamentally in terms of some of the key decisions we shared. So it was a collective mindset around, well, what's the best foot to take forward here? And I was very lucky for that, because I appreciate there might be some people on this kind of webinar who are maybe working on their own, or they want to do something on their own. And so kind of the scariness around that is, well, taking that plunge, I'm going to be on my own. So how am I going to manage with kind of juggling that around salary, paying for what I need, all of the big risk that you consider. And when you haven't got anyone there with you, that I can imagine can be a real daunting prospect. But I was lucky that through the businesses that I'd worked in and what I'd done previous, I'd kind of built a strong team already. So that was there from day one.
Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, in terms of pressures, I mean, work pressures, but also, family and those side. I mean, how did that all? I mean, do you find that work balance has changed before your company, after, how it is now? Has that evolved?
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't get anything in terms of whether, unless you're prepared to invest into it, both emotionally and with your time. Nothing happens overnight, so everything does take time, and you kind of have to get over setback after setback, learn from your mistakes. Those things keep you up at night. And if you've got a small family, they also keep you up at night. So it's kind of getting through some of that early phase when you're starting a family and you're starting a business, and things are starting to kind of move forward, but you struggle with that internal kind of dialogue on, I know it's 7:30 and I really should leave the office to get home and see my kids, but I've got to get this out. And sometimes that was a challenge, kind of breaking away from the business in order to just keep yourself mentally stable and give your family the time that is required, because you need to invest into that as well.
Okay, fair enough. And it sounds like, you know, Lee, your business has been going for 4 years now. You know, so you had that experience as managing director, you know, when it wasn't your company. You know, over the 4 years, you know, have there been times where since then, you know, you've found it tough, you've wanted to, you know, you wanted to give, you know, you wanted to give up? I mean, assuming that probably there have been times, you know, what keeps you hanging in there? What stopped you then?
Numerous times. You doubt yourself all the time. I think especially when you first set out, you kind of and I'm a very insular person, so kind of keeping things all in my head and doubting myself, questioning it constantly, probably having that feeling that you're just not good enough. Like, this should be happening, I should be doing this in a different way. Those very early on were there. But I think the older you get, the more people you've got in your network who you can go to for advice and call upon when times are a little bit tough and you're questioning it. I've made a conscious effort to invest into those relationships. So there's people that I know that when I'm having a real rubbish day and I've lost a big deal or we've kind of made a bad turn somewhere in the business, that I've got people that I can now share that with, and I'm open to share that with. Whereas I think sometimes, looking back at when I kind of first set out about 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't necessarily have had the confidence, is probably not the right thing, but just the openness to letting other people in, thinking that I've got to put out every fire myself. So yeah, I mean, we're 4 years in. The first 2 years were extremely tricky. Kind of having people in the business that you knew in an established company to kind of come into a brand new organisation where you've got to put the actual footings into the business to build your house. Kind of realising that we've maybe started it a bit too quick, too soon. We should have maybe scaled it in a different way to start with. So all of those lessons you learn as you go on. But they're lessons which kind of put you in the place where you are now to go on and make better decisions. So I've kind of grown into that mindset that everything that we do and the mistakes that we make, they're not actually mistakes. They are perhaps decisions that we make, which if we were better advised, we would have made differently. And so I try and take that mindset now into how we work here at Kingsley. Is
there a particular time, dilemma, decision over that 4 years that, you know, you think, you know, that really helped? You know, you learn a lot from that, you know, so you really proud of that decision that you've made, or retrospectively very important to how the business is now?
That's a real good question, actually. I think it's not so much maybe the decision. I think what I'm proud of the most when you look at our business is that the reason why we wanted to set up a recruitment company wasn't that we wanted to make more money than everyone else. Fundamentally, that we all wanted to earn well, but we all wanted a business that we could be proud of, that was a business that empowered individuals, that brought out their potential, that allowed people to not only have a career, but to have an environment where we can harness that potential, and whether it's in recruitment or they go on and own another business in somewhere else, in another sector, doing something completely different. Having the ability to do that as an owner of a company and seeing that kind of happen and unfold over the years that we've set up Kingsley has probably been the most rewarding thing for me, and why I guess we've been successful in having people that are actually, some of them are no longer in recruitment, have gone on to set up businesses in other industries and do something completely different, but kind of cultivating a culture which allows people to be involved, to be invested into the success story that we're trying to create, and really giving them that value is something that really drove one of the fundamental reasons why we set this business up. So I'm kind of proud that we've been able to do that and create that culture within the business.
It sounds like quite a clear, drive there about what you've been trying to create. I mean, has that been reasonably consistent throughout? If I was to speak to you 4 years ago and we're speaking today, quite common themes there?
100%. I think we already had a kind of clear view in terms of what worked for us in other companies. I think what I was quick to do is to understand for myself, being kind of top of the tree and maybe overviewing decisions that were made, is that you don't know everything, and I'll never know everything. You know what you know at a certain point. So if you can have others around you that fill the gaps, really. If you're a visionary and you've got lots of creative ideas, one thing I've learned about myself is I'm probably best to get those ideas off the ground, but to kind of see them through and do all of the process mapping and all of the, I guess, the analytical stuff behind that's not me. But one of the directors, he absolutely is that. He's great at the detail. He's great at kind of delivering projects in that way. So if you can find kind of individuals either that you're working with, or maybe that are external to you in your network, that maybe give you a little bit of guidance in the areas that you might need some support with, in order to make better decisions, then for me, that's what anyone really who's about to go into business should be looking to do, because you won't have the answers to everything. We're not built like that. We need other people's help.
I mean, do you think how important are these people around you? Whether it's a formal, your business partner or just someone you can soundboard off to in these this decision-making process that people in our, on the webinar today might be going through themselves?
Yeah, I think it's vital that you if you have an idea about a business or something that you want to do, which requires any kind of investment, or you're going to start on your own, is our ideas need to be tested, and you kind of need to run outside yourself in order to hopefully cement that your idea is a good one in the first place. But also, it's all right having an idea, but how does that idea make you the right person to kind of deliver that on your own? What do you need in order for that idea to become a real business and for that business to achieve its potential? So I think anyone that is lucky enough to be able to start a business with someone else who can they can bounce off each other, share ideas, question involvement and frequency are kind of three things that are our kind of mantra at Kingsley, where everyone's got the ability to question everything. We involve everybody in key decisions, and we try and do it as frequently as possible. So you can change your landscape quickly, and also you can get on to things which aren't working. So I think anyone that's not got that, look into your network and try and find people who can maybe, from an external point of view, give you some mentorship or some advice whenever you might need to kind of throw ideas around.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great. We've had a couple of questions come through, and sorry, I didn't make it clear before. If you do have any questions, for Lee throughout this, then do put them onto the chat, and we'll put them forward to Lee. So we've spoken about the business growth over the last 4 years, and it's very sounds great, really. Somebody's come through and asked about, as being a business owner, has that living up to your expectations? Have there been, as well as that, have there been sort of nasty surprises as well along the way?
Yeah, I think there have 100%. Has it lived up to my expectations? It's hard to know when you're not a business owner what being a business owner feels like. So I think for me, it's been almost like a natural kind of progression where I felt like I've had quite strong leadership qualities through most of my life, but to kind of sit here and think, well, I'm a business owner now. It's not been an easy journey, and there's many times when you just think you have to wear many different hats all the time, and the pressure around that can sometimes be quite immense when you've got to be on your best game for everyone in your business. You've got a business which has kind of hit a bit of a bump in the road, and you're figuring out how to get kind of through that and around it. And you're juggling everything in terms of not seeing friends and maybe not investing as much time into your family. So I think that there needs to be a real emotional investment into why you want to do it. Because if that's not there, if you can't fully commit to it on an emotional level, then don't do it. Go and find something else to do. Go and kind of change direction with your career. But you need to really want this business to do something great on an emotional level, not just on a purely financial level. Otherwise, I think I'm not saying it won't work, and I'm sure there are businesses that have kind of proven that theory wrong. But I think for you as an individual, it's so much easier to invest time into something that, one, you love doing, you love being around the people who are in your business, and you actually have a shared vision on where you want to take that. So for me, that kind of helped me when I was in kind of some dark places over questioning whether I still wanted to do all of this and whether it's the right way. It was kind of having people around me that I could go and sit and vent some frustration to, who actually would say, well, actually, you've got X, Y, and Z. Go and ask them, or go and maybe have a meeting with that person, and they can kind of talk you through their experience. So for me, that's really important that people do that.
Okay, fine. I mean, I suppose quite topical at the moment. The sector, you're in, specifically, challenging times at the moment, globally, of course. I mean, do you feel, knowing what you know now, 4 years into the business, looking forward, better equipped? How will you be approaching things, differently to get through, what is quite a turbulent time ahead?
Yeah, we've obviously I've been keeping my ear very close to the ground over the past kind of 2 months. And looking at our sector and how it's been impacted, it's been massive. And it has for every industry, but obviously recruitment, most businesses have been kind of focused on their own survival. So the kind of growth, adding new people into their teams, etc. As you can rightly imagine, being on anyone's real agenda. I think what we did, and we did this 2 years ago, was we adopted a different approach. So we've been using video technology in our business before it's now all become hip and trendy, and everyone's on a video, aren't they, these days? So 2 years ago, we kind of integrated that as a value-added service to our clients. And one thing I think this period's allowed us to do is to see that actually we are kind of further advanced to many of our competitors already in terms of utilising this technology to our offering. So we've just tried to really work on being there for clients on a kind of consultancy level, which is what we class ourselves as, really. We're kind of engaged with them, not just to help them hire staff, but we consult with them on market conditions, how to best integrate their people into their business, work with them on their retention scheme. So consulting wasn't a kind of accident. We stumbled upon that name, the kind of end of our name. That's exactly what we wanted to be for our customers, not recruit, not a kind of manpower solution. That's not what we're about. So I think for us, there's been some shoots of hope over the last couple of weeks that a level of normality is starting to return. I think technology has given everyone now a taste for what the world can feel like. without having to go into an office environment. So I see some big moves in our space in terms of new technology and advancement of current technology that's out there. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how we bounce back from this across all industry sectors. But I think there's 40,000 competitors to us doing what we do. So in order to be successful in our industry, you really have to do what you do well. And I'd like to think that with some of the business that we've managed to achieve during this kind of lockdown phase, our clients are still putting their trust in us. So we can kind of work on those relationships as we come through it, and hopefully we'll push on.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the company name. Actually, someone's asked, how and why did you choose that? And I think, I think it is important. I speak to business owners that, the name comes and then all of a sudden they've got a vision and they, contextualize it, and it's important part of the deliberation. And potentially with 40,000 competitors, it doesn't help to have something that's going to stand out. Did you spend a lot of time on the business, namely?
I would say it was something that we, when we looked at it, the kind of investor that's kind of into my business and the group of companies he's got, we kind of wanted to keep an element of that. So Kingsley's actually a part of his name. The consultancy element was for us, and why I say that is because he put his faith in us and he put his kind of his money into this business when actually we've had conversations with other people and it never quite felt right. It did with the investment that we eventually took up. But the consultancy piece was never about this just being a recruitment company. So the kind of vision that we had was that recruitment would be an element. So there'd be a recruitment company, and then we'd maybe have kind of satellite businesses that would all share some kind of common interest, but would all be standalone businesses in their own right. And therefore we could create a really strong group structure to not just recruit people for the clients that we service, but to actually fundamentally go and help these clients really reshape their business and be successful in what areas that they're looking to be. And that's still a passion and a driving force behind where we see this vision going. Great.
I mean, we've had plenty of questions come through, and actually a couple on recruitment. So obviously people keen to understand a little bit more maybe about a sector they're not so familiar with. One of them is, as a recruitment company, is there extra pressure to employ great people? And you could touch a little bit on your own process to try and hold up to those high standards.
100%. I mean, the hardest thing to do is to recruit good people. We all know that. Like, I'm sure you guys have all had a bad experience of recruitment somewhere in your life. So I think our drive, one of the drivers, is for us to kind of improve the industry, the perception that we've got, our industry has, because it is really bad. In terms of have we made mistakes and got it wrong? I would say there's definitely been one real mistake where we kind of thought, actually, new market, it'd be great to get into that sector. Let's run with it. And the person didn't just have the same kind of core values as what we portray as a business. So that relationship didn't last very long. But I think I've got no regrets over people that we've hired and for one reason or another are no longer with us now. I would hire those people again in a heartbeat, because the way that we went about recruiting them and the kind of people that they are and still are, a lot of them weren't from a recruitment background. We tended to not want to go with that kind of stereotypical recruitment consultant. fundamentally it was about the person, their moral compass, their ethics and ethos, what they wanted to achieve in life. So I think recruitment is a sector that you can give somebody the tools in order to flourish, but that it would still come down to that individual on the success that they would maybe bring. So I can sleep at night thinking that we've given everybody that opportunity and we've delivered it well. So some are still with us, and hopefully we'll hire in a few more when this is all over to continue on our journey. Some have gone in completely different directions with their careers, but would still kind of now class their experience at Kingsley as the best job they've still ever had. It's just that recruitment's not been the sector for them.
Yeah. I mean, Lee, sort of, it comes across to me that there's a real common theme of, about how the business has made decisions and looking back at them, and that ability to make the decisions in many of our points today. So I suppose sort of with that in mind, I'll ask sort of another question that's come through to sort of wrap things up. Quite a big one, I'm afraid. If you were going to go back and speak to your 24-year-old self, which is probably firmly in our BITAx community,
Yeah.
What advice would you give to yourself?
What a great question. So I would say what I wish someone would have grabbed hold of me and said from the very start is, don't persecute yourself for making bad decisions, because you will. Be bold with making decisions earlier on in your career, where I think there's a level that I knew I wanted to get into recruitment a lot earlier than I did. So I got in at 27, but actually, if I'd have kind of made the decision quicker, where would I have been right now? So my 24-year-old self, if I could have gave him a nudge back then and said, look, just stop procrastinating, go and do it, go and find some sales experience, and go and really fulfill your potential that all these people are telling you to do. I think that's a key. You've got the rest of your career to go down whatever kind of route you want to go down, but if you can kind of be bold enough to do it earlier on, then you've got so much learning ahead of you, and you will learn, you will fall, and you'll pick yourself up and you'll go in a different direction, but fundamentally, hopefully you'll get there quicker. And I think ask everyone that you know for help. Don't be scared to think that you have to do it on your own, because I know that's what puts a lot of people off. It's that fear of, well, how am I going to cope with doing this on my own? I've got all of these financial pressures behind me. So go and speak to someone that's done it. Come and speak to me. Speak to whoever it might be. I wish I could have said that to my 24-year-old self, is to perhaps go and seek advice outside of your comfort zone and speak to people that have they have been where you are right now, and take their inspiration, understand what they've done on the journey that might assist you.
Wow, great. Well, look, Lee, it's time's absolutely flown by. I think this has been a really good addition to the speakers we've had so far, and hopefully loads of really good nuggets of information for those that are able to join online. We're regularly posting about events on the BITAx LinkedIn page. This and all the other webinars that we are doing will be available online, and we're holding these every couple of weeks. So Lee, really appreciate your time today. I think you've given plenty of good information for our audience, and looking forward to picking up things with you another time.
It's my pleasure, and guys, obviously, thanks very much for taking some time to come and join us. If there is anything in particular that you did want to run past me or ask, Pete, how do we facilitate that? Is it best to kind of come through BITA, or kind of connect on LinkedIn or whatever that might be?
Well, plenty of LinkedIn posts that had your details on them, Lee. If people can't get to you directly, then come to any of the board members on BITAx, and we'll put them in contact, with you. So, I think every single post we are promoting today had you linked and tagged appropriately. But if anyone's struggling, reach out to me or anyone else, and we'll put them in touch.
Good stuff. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Excellent.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Peter, thank you as well, because that facilitation was good too. Very good. And thank you for your honesty, Lee. Excellent.
No problem.